At my sister's engagement party, my mom laughed and said, "You'll never have a night like this. You were always the disappointment." Everyone just smiled. I laughed too, but they had no idea I'd made one call that changed everything. Let me start from the beginning. My sister had always been the golden child. Straight A's, perfect boyfriend, dream job at a prestigious law firm. I was the one who dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, and somehow always managed to disappoint everyone without really trying. The moment that changed everything happened when I was standing near the dessert table, watching my sister pose for what must have been the 100th photo of the evening. My mom approached with that familiar look of barely concealed disdain that I'd grown accustomed to over the years. She looked at my sister, then at me, and started laughing. Not a gentle chuckle, but a loud, almost cruel laugh that caught the attention of nearby guests. She told me I'd never have a night like this, that I was always the disappointment of the family. The words hit me like physical blows, but what made it worse was how everyone around us just smiled and nodded along, as if my public humiliation was part of the evening's entertainment. I laughed too. I had to. What else could I do in that moment? But as I forced that laugh, something cold settled in my chest. For 32 years, I'd been the family scapegoat, the one everyone could point to when they needed to feel better about themselves. Tonight, something inside me finally snapped. I excused myself and walked to the bathroom, pulling out my phone with hands that were surprisingly steady. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd hoped I'd never have to use. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment before I pressed it. He answered on the second ring, and I told him it was time. Time to reveal what I discovered 6 months ago, but had kept quiet about, hoping my family might change, might finally see me as more than just their designated failure. The conversation was brief, professional. By Monday morning, everything would be different. You see, while my family saw me as a disappointment, they'd never bothered to notice what I actually did for work. They assumed I was still the same screw-up I'd been in my 20s, bouncing between dead-end jobs and bad decisions. They had no idea that I'd spent the last 5 years working as a private investigator, building a reputation for finding things people desperately wanted to keep hidden. 6 months ago, I'd been hired by a woman who suspected her husband was having an affair. Standard case, good money, should have been straightforward. But when I started following the husband, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. The man wasn't just having an affair, he was having an affair with my sister. I sat in my car outside that downtown hotel for 3 hours, watching them through the window of the restaurant, then following them upstairs. I had photos, timestamps, credit card receipts, everything needed to prove that my perfect sister had been sleeping with a married man for over a year, all while planning her engagement to her unsuspecting boyfriend. But I kept quiet. Part of me hoped she'd come clean on her own, that maybe this was just a phase she'd work through. I told myself that destroying her life wouldn't make mine any better. I convinced myself I was being the bigger person. Tonight changed all that. The person I'd called was my client, the wife who'd hired me 6 months ago. I'd been stalling, giving her excuse after excuse about why I needed more time to gather evidence. But tonight, I told her everything was ready. I'd email her the complete file first thing Monday morning. I returned to the party and spent the rest of the evening watching my sister dance with her fiancé, her face glowing with happiness and champagne. My mom continued making subtle digs at me throughout the night, each comment sharper than the last. My dad joined in occasionally, making jokes about my career choices and asking when I planned to get my life together. I just smiled and nodded, counting down the hours until Monday. Update 1. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable rain. I sent the email at exactly 9 a.m., along with a detailed report and a flash drive containing all the evidence. I included photos, video footage, hotel receipts, and a timeline that painted a very clear picture of my sister's double life. My client called me within an hour. She was crying, but she thanked me. She'd suspected for months, but seeing the proof was both devastating and liberating. She asked if I could serve as a witness if things went to court. I agreed. By Wednesday, the first cracks started showing. My sister called me, which was unusual since we barely spoke unless forced to at family gatherings. She sounded frantic, asking if I'd heard from anyone, if anyone had been asking questions about her. I told her no, keeping my voice casual and concerned, like a good brother should. That evening, my mom called. My sister's fiancé had apparently received some anonymous materials in the mail. Photos, documents, things that painted my sister in a very unflattering light. The wedding was off. My sister was devastated. My mom wanted to know if I had any idea who might do such a terrible thing to our family. I told her I couldn't imagine who would be so cruel. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. For years, my family had treated me like I was invisible, like I was too incompetent to be a threat. They'd never bothered to learn what I actually did for work, never showed interest in my life beyond making sure I knew how disappointed they were in me. If they'd paid attention, if they'd shown even basic curiosity about my career, they might have realized that hiring someone in my profession to investigate your affair was probably not the wisest choice. Update 2. The fallout was swift and brutal. My sister's fiancé didn't just break up with her quietly. He made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why. The story spread through their friend group like wildfire. My sister, who'd built her entire identity around being perfect, suddenly found herself the subject of gossip and scandal. But that was just the beginning. The married man she'd been seeing? His wife didn't just file for divorce. She was a successful businesswoman with connections, and she made sure the affair became very public very quickly. She leaked the story to local news outlets, framing it as a story about professional ethics. After all, my sister had met her lover through work connections. My sister's law firm, one of the most prestigious in the city, couldn't ignore the negative publicity. They didn't fire her immediately, but they made it clear that her partnership track was permanently derailed. The whispers in the office, the sideways glances, the sudden exclusion from important cases, it all added up to a hostile work environment that would eventually force her to leave. My parents were in full damage control mode. My mom, who'd spent years talking about my sister's achievements to anyone who'd listen, suddenly found herself making excuses to friends and neighbors about why the wedding was canceled so suddenly. The most satisfying part was watching my dad, who'd always prided himself on being a good judge of character, struggle to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the woman the evidence revealed her to be. My mom called me again, this time crying. She asked if I could help somehow, if I knew anyone who might be able to make this all go away. The desperation in her voice was something I'd never heard before. For the first time in my life, she was coming to me for help instead of lecturing me about my failures. I told her I'd look into it, knowing full well there was nothing I could or would do. Update 3. 3 weeks after the engagement party, my sister showed up at my apartment. I'd been expecting this visit, though I was surprised it took her this long. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and I could see she'd been crying. She asked if we could talk, and I let her in. She sat on my couch and broke down completely, telling me how her entire life had fallen apart, how she didn't understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Then she looked at me with desperate eyes and asked if I thought this was karma, if maybe she deserved what was happening to her. She said she'd been thinking about all the times she'd joined in when our parents criticized me, all the times she'd acted like she was better than me. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the engagement party. I remembered 32 years of being treated like the family failure. I remembered every snide comment, every disappointed look, every time I was made to feel like I wasn't good enough to share the same air as the rest of them. I told her that sometimes life just works out in unexpected ways. I said that maybe this was an opportunity for her to start over, to build something real instead of the perfect facade she'd been maintaining. I even offered to help her find a new job, to use my connections to get her a fresh start somewhere else. She hugged me and thanked me, calling me the only person in the family who'd ever really been there for her. The irony was almost too much to bear. Final update. It's been 6 months since the engagement party that changed everything. My sister ended up taking a job in another state, essentially starting her life over from scratch. The scandal followed her for a while, but she's slowly rebuilding her reputation and her confidence. My parents have been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about their golden child, and by extension, about their treatment of me over the years. My mom actually apologized to me last month, admitting that they'd been unfair and that maybe they'd never really given me a chance to succeed. It was too little, too late, but I accepted the apology gracefully. The married man lost everything in his divorce and faced professional consequences of his own. His wife got a very favorable settlement and has since started a non-profit organization focused on helping women who've been betrayed by unfaithful spouses. As for me, my business has never been better. Word got around about the thoroughness of my investigation, and I've had more clients than I can handle. I'm thinking about expanding, maybe hiring an assistant. The strangest part of all this is that I don't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Watching my sister's life crumble didn't make me feel better about my own. It didn't erase years of hurt and disappointment. It just made me realize that revenge is a hollow victory when it comes at the expense of people you once loved. But it did teach my family a valuable lesson about underestimating people. They learned that the family disappointment they'd written off years ago was more capable than they'd ever imagined. They learned that treating someone like they're invisible doesn't actually make them powerless. Sometimes it just makes them dangerous. Most importantly, they learned that words have consequences. That casual cruelty delivered with a smile and a laugh can fester and grow into something much darker. I still go to family gatherings, though the dynamic has changed completely. No one makes jokes about my career anymore. No one questions my life choices or treats me like the family failure. There's a new wariness in their interactions with me, a careful respect that wasn't there before. Sometimes I catch my mom looking at me with something that might be fear, and I wonder if she's finally realized that the quiet son she dismissed for so many years had been paying attention all along, cataloging every slight, every insult, every moment of casual cruelty. The truth is, I could have destroyed them all if I'd wanted to. The investigation into my sister revealed other family secrets, other vulnerabilities that could have been exploited. But I chose to stop with her because the lesson was delivered effectively enough. My family now knows that I'm not the harmless disappointment they thought I was. They know that underestimating someone for 32 years can have consequences they never saw coming. And they know that sometimes the person you least expect is the one who holds all the cards. That knowledge has changed everything between us, and honestly, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. But it's definitely taught them to think twice before they laugh at someone else's expense. The night of that engagement party, they had no idea that one phone call would change everything. But I did, and that made all the difference.